Hello and welcome to AR on AR. I'm Adam Rose and today we're going to be looking at what you would eat on a short adventure race. In other words, sports nutrition. The reason I'm going to be looking at just short races is because what you would eat on an expedition length race isn't necessarily quite the same as what you'd eat on a short race. We'll look at that in another episode. And also a quick shout out to Bend Racing. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. Hopefully this is useful for the teams who are going to compete in Expedition Oregon next year. All right, so what is a short adventure race? Well, I'm going to define it for this episode simply as anything 24 hours or less, whether it's a 5-6 hour race, 12-hour race, or even 24-hour race. And I've got a lot of food laid out on the table, different kinds of foods. I'll say in a nutshell, you can probably eat anything you want for a short adventure race. Now, having said that, I'm not a sports nutritionist. I don't yet have the diploma in sports nutrition. It's coming down the pipe, but I don't yet have it. So everything I'm going to tell you right now is simply based on my experience, and you need to go out and try it for yourself, see what works for you, and adapt your approach accordingly. It's also interesting to note that what I eat now, after over 10 years of racing, is different from what I used to take when I first started racing. When I first started, I was doing 5 to 6 hour races. And the stuff here on the right-hand side of the table is more what I favored. And as time has shifted, I've moved over to the left-hand side of the table. I still eat pretty much whatever I want, but I've gone away from the kind of artificial stuff, the manufactured stuff, and more towards natural foods. And that's the same for sports nutrition as a science. It's constantly evolving, constantly learning. It is a new science. And so what you might have been recommended 20 years ago is not necessarily the same as what you'd be recommended nowadays. There has been improvement. Now, quick explanation. An average person can consume 200 to 300 calories per hour. So whatever calories you're eating, you want to make sure that it gives you enough energy to sustain that race. So over here on the right-hand side of the table, I've got the kind of stuff that's very carb heavy. So, and quite manufactured for the most part. So I've got sweets, I've got a powder that, sports powders, energy powder that you dilute in water and you're drinking constantly, and I've got those sports gels. Typically if people go run a marathon, that's what they're going to be having. What they, by and large, won't be carrying is the stuff on the left-hand side of the table. But it works. The plus side is it's very quick energy. You can have a whole meal, for example, if you get some of the powders, just to name a few of them. Hammer Nutrition makes something called Perpetuum. There's something called Carbo Pro, Tailwind. My team used to race with something called Peronin, which is more of a meal than maybe the Carbo Pro and those kind of things. But, you can get 400 calories into your system really, really quickly. So you have a whole meal just in a few swigs of a drink. So the energy return is quick. The digestion is quick, the preparation is quick, and if you're kayaking or paddling where you've got to use both hands, and you can't, with one hand be reaching for food, you could just put it in a bottle, drink, and so it does work. It does give you energy. But, the downside with gels especially is with some people, if they have a lot of gels, it'll cause an upset stomach, diarrhea, and all sorts of other horrible consequences. Although I will mention that there are some gels out in the market which are really natural, for want of a term, very basic ingredients, mostly chia seeds. Just add some water and they give you a good energy output. So not all gels are made the same, but yeah, if you're going to go for the sweet stuff, nothing wrong with that. And if you do go for the sweet stuff, just to point out, you do want to ensure that you have some sort of salt going into your system, especially if that race is a very fast race, running rather than walking, you're sweating a lot. When you sweat, you lose salt. So when you lose salt, you've got to replace it. Otherwise, your body will go haywire. And that's exactly what happened actually to Daniel in Eco Challenge Fiji when his body shut down. It was simply a lack of salt. So he knew what he was doing, but it was even more salt than he expected, as he'll tell you. So make sure salt's going into your system if you're going on a very sweet kind of energy source. So, use that kind of stuff if you want, but, everything that you're going to try, hopefully you've tried out in your training first of all. So what you shouldn't do, and this is a golden rule about adventure racing and sports in general, I suppose you could say, don't race with stuff you haven't tried out in training. You need to establish on the training what your body can tolerate, what your body enjoys, what works for you, and then on the race day, you know what's coming. You don't have any unexpected surprises. A very common thing, I use them then, I use them now, energy bars of some kind. So these, contain nuts, flapjacks, pressed fruit bars. They're really nice. 9 bars, whatever, whoever makes them, it really doesn't matter. But bars are great, not just because they give you energy, but because you can stash them in your bag really easily. You can take little chunks off. You don't have to eat the whole thing in one go. But yeah, bars, I ate them then, I still eat them now. Good source of energy. And then over on the left-hand side of the table here, I've got a whole bunch of things, which is the kind of stuff I favor more now. I've got chocolate. What's changed is the chocolate I used to eat was sweeter, higher carb content, basically, higher sugar content. And now I go for the higher cocoa content. So the energy in here is primarily from fat rather than carbohydrate. And if you want to know what kind of chocolate I'm talking about then, it's something with usually 70% cocoa and above. 75, 80, 85. If you go up to 90, 95, yes, it's going to be very high in fat, but it'll probably be quite bitter. And if it's bitter, I don't know if you'll actually eat that much of it, and so you won't get enough energy. So chocolate is great. I just tend to go for the higher fat content chocolate nowadays. Olives, why not? They're savory. I like savory more than I like sweet. So really handy pack. Just whip this off. Chili olives in this case. Delicious, love the kind of stuff. High fat content. Cheese, I love cheese. It's salty, which is good. It's got protein, which is good. And it's high fat, obviously, so long energy output. And I like these baby bells because you can take the wrapper off, which is what I've already done here. I've thrown the wrapper away before I start the race. And that way, on the race, it's still clean, it's still hygienic, just like a banana would be, right? You just peel it, and I can have cheese. So cheese, very, very good energy source for longer outputs of energy. Peanut butter, this is a pouch. Really, just like a baby food pouch, really quite handy because you just pop this open, have a swig of peanut butter, and this peanut butter's got salt mixed in, so it adds to the flavor, plus it gives me the salt that I need. So quite handy, and it doesn't leak all over my bag because it's sealed itself like that. Really, really good. I've always been a fan of some sort of animal protein. I know that some of you will be vegans. You can go down the vegan route, that's totally fine. But for those of you who do eat animal products, salami, really good. Salami, ham, jerky. If you're American, you might be getting beef jerky. Or if you're South African, you might be getting biltong. I love biltong. High protein, good nutrition, and quite light because all the moisture has been dehydrated out of it the way biltong is dried. So some sort of meaty, salty product, high protein, good for muscle repair. Protein necessary for muscle repair, really, really good. And then over here, nuts, they're such a good product, whether you're having them for short races or long races. Long energy output, high in fat, especially macadamia nuts, cashew nuts, all those kind of things. I'm a huge fan of nuts. And before I race, I'd probably tear this thing off the top there to open the pack, throw that in the bin. So on the race, I don't have a little thing, where do I throw this and where do I have to stash that? So that's a good idea. Seeds, linseed, pumpkin seed, sunflower seed, again, very, very good source of all those proteins and oils and carbohydrates too in there as well. Trail mix, so it's the nuts, of course, and the seeds mixed in with fruit, dehydrated fruit, and all sorts of things. So again, all great things. What we used to do before we raced I would get all of those ingredients, the nuts, dates, crystallized ginger, some sort of, especially licorice all sorts. I just like licorice all sorts because it's got a different flavor from basic sweetness. Mix it all up in a bowl and then put it into packs and distribute it with the team. So you'd have a pack of a mixed variety of flavors, and then on a short race, you're just constantly dipping into this energy, and almost with each handful, it's a surprise. So rather than just nuts on its own, it'd be a mixture of flavors, a mixture of nutrition, a mixture of energy, and therefore far more palatable over the longer term. And I've even got some fresh fruit here. So on a short race, fresh fruit, nothing wrong with that. Obviously it tastes great, thirst quenching, all sorts of things. Often if it's heavy, like apples and stuff, I wouldn't actually carry it with me. I'd put it in the transition box so that I can get that when I come back off a stage, get that heavier food there and then start chowing down. But I wouldn't really carry too much fruit if it's too heavy. And then I've got over here some Pringles, not because they're special, but because they taste nice. I don't know how healthy they are, but you know, you need to include food that gives you an emotional boost, not just food that's purely for its energy content or nutritional content. So, you know, all sorts of things that people are going to come along with. But make sure you get something that kind of raises your joy buds, your taste buds in the middle of a race. And then, especially with a longer race, 12 hours and above, I'd say you want to be bringing along some sort of proper meal. So what I've got over here is fairly typical of a dehydrated meal here in the UK. So you add water, and if it's hot water, it'll be ready in 8 to 10 minutes, right? Pull this off, pour the hot water, seal it back up, wait 10 minutes, and it's ready. Now, during a fast race, like a short adventure race, you don't want to sit around waiting for 8 to 10 minutes. I suppose you could come into transition, pour the hot water in and seal it, then finish the transition, and at the end of the transition, grab this on your way out. Yes, you could do that. But what's quite good about these dehydrated meals is you can actually rehydrate them on the move by adding cold water. And they don't say that in the instructions, but literally, if you leave this for 30 to 40 minutes, it will be completely palatable, even though, okay, it's cold. It doesn't taste as nice as when it's hot. But you can take these, and these are a staple in expedition races. And have them anywhere, anytime, and you don't have to carry a stove with you to get a full, pretty delicious meal. What you don't want to be carrying is this kind of meal. It's a meal just like the dehydrated meal I just showed you, but this is already hydrated, right? So you don't need to add water. The downside, and the reason I wouldn't carry this, it's heavy, right? It's more than double the weight of the dehydrated version. So yeah, you can eat it instantly, but what I'd probably do again is leave this in the transition so I can grab it from the box, eat it there, and then off I go. But yeah, you just got to find what works for you. All right, so 200 to 300 calories an hour on an average. Probably want to set an interval timer on your watch. Goes off every 25 or 30 minutes. It reminds the team to have a bite, a little snack of that bar, a little few handful of nuts, and just keep that energy flowing. Keep that energy flowing. And you know, as long as you've prepared well, you've trained with the food, there should be no surprises on race day. And yeah, eat what you want as long as it gives you enough energy. And you enjoy it. In fact, in those short races that I used to do back when I first started, there was one guy who used to win almost every single 5-6 hour event that we had in the area, and it was kind of puzzling, like what was his secret sauce? What was his special recipe that gave him the ability to top the podium every single time? And on speaking to him, it turned out his nutrition for a 6 hour race was Coca-Cola. That's it. He didn't carry anything else. He would go out on a bike leg, let's say 2-3 hour bike leg, come back to transition, have a couple of cups of Coke, and then go out on the trekking leg. 2-3 hours, come back, another couple of cups of Coke, go out and do the kayaking leg. So it's really kind of interesting that he could compete at that level, simply getting the energy that he needed to get his body to perform properly. So what I'm saying really is there is no one single ingredient or one single recipe that is going to guarantee you're going to perform well. Okay, you've got to work out, as that guy did, what works for him, and then adapt, modify, succeed, compete. All right, so hopefully this is useful. Subscribe and all that other kind of stuff. I'm heading towards 1,000 subscribers, which I'm really, really grateful for, which is significant in YouTube terms just because it makes other things happen. But yeah, there is no great secret to feeding yourself during an adventure race. Really, if you want, bring cold pizza, bring cold hamburgers, bring sandwiches, bring pork pies, jam in your pack, and off you go. All right, thank you. See you next time.